Section 1 of Over the Brazier. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Cavaet. Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. The Poet in the Nursery. The youngest poet down the shelves was fumbling in a dim library just behind the chair, from which the ancient poet was mumbling a song about lovers at a fair, pulling his long white beard and gently grumbling that rhymes were beastly things and never there. And as I groped the whole time I was thinking about the tragic poem I'd been writing, an old man's life of beer and whiskey drinking, his years of kidnapping and wicked fighting, and how at last into a fever sinking, remorsefully he died, his bedclothes biting. But suddenly I saw the bright green cover of a thin pretty book right down below. I snatched it up and turned the pages over, to find it full of poetry, and so put it down my neck with quick hands like a lover, and turned to watch if the old man saw it go. The book was full of funny muddling mazes, each rounded off into a lovely song, and most extraordinary and monstrous phrases, knotted with rhymes like a slave driver's thong, and metre twisting like a chain of daisies, with great big splendid words a sentence long. I took the book to bed with me and gloated, learning the lines that seemed to sound most grand. So soon the pretty emerald green was coated with jam and greasy marks from my hot hand, while round the nursery for long months there floated wonderful words no one could understand. End of section 1. Section 2 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Star Talk. Are you awake, Gemelli, this frosty night? We'll be awake till Reveille, which is sunrise, says the Gemelli. It's no good trying to go to sleep. If there's wine to be got, we'll drink it deep. But sleep is gone tonight. But sleep is gone for tonight. Are you cold too, poor Pleiads, this frosty night? Yes, and so are the Hyads. See us cuddle and hug, said the Pleiads. 6 in a ring, it keeps us warm. We'll huddle together like birds in a storm. It's bitter weather tonight. It's bitter weather tonight. What do you hunt, Orion, this starry night? The ram, the bull, and the lion, and the great bear, says Orion. With my starry quiver and beautiful belt, I am trying to find a good thick pelt to warm my shoulders tonight. To warm my shoulders tonight. Did you hear that great she-bear this frosty night? Yes, he's talking of stripping me bare of my own big fur, says the she-bear. I'm afraid of the man and his terrible arrow. The thought of it chills my bones to the marrow. And the frost is so cruel tonight. And the frost is so cruel tonight. How is your trade, Aquarius, this frosty night? Complaints is many and various, and my feet are cold, says Aquarius. There's Venus objects to dolphin scales, and Mars to crab spawn found in my pails. And the pump has frozen tonight. And the pump has frozen tonight. End of section 2. Section 3 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. The Dying Night and the Fauns. Through the dreams of yesternight, my blood brother, great in fight, I saw lying, slowly dying, where the weary woods was sighing with the rustle of the birches, with the quiver of the larches. Woodland fawns with hairy haunches grin in wonder through the branches, woodland fawns that know no fear. Wandering, they wander near, munching mushrooms red as coral, bunches too of rue and sorrel, wonder at his radiant fairness, at his dinted, shattered harness, with uncouth and bestial sounds, knowing naught of ward or wounds, but the crimson lifeblood oozes and makes roses of the daisies, Persian carpets of the mosses. Softly now his spirit passes, as the bee forsakes the lily, as the berry leaves the holly, but the fawns still think him living, and with bay leaves they are weaving crowns to deck him. Well they may. He is worthy of the bay. End of section 3. Section 4 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Willaree. On the rough mountain wind that blows so free rides a little storm sprite whose name is Willaree. The fleecy cloudlets are not his, no shepherd is he, for he drives the shaggy thunderclouds over land and sea. His home is on the mountain top, where I love to be, amid grey rocks and brambles and the red rowan tree. He whistles down the chimney, he whistles to me, and I send greeting back to him, whistling cheerily. The great elms are battling, waves are on the sea, loud roars the mountain wind. God rest you, Willaree. End of section 4. Section 5 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. The Face of Heaven. Little winds in a hurry, great winds over the sky, clouds sleek or furry, storms that rage and die. The whole cycle of weather from calm to hurricane, of four gales wrath together, thunder, lightning, rain. The burning sun, snowing, hailstones pattering down, blue skies and red skies showing, skies with a black frown. By these signs and wonders you may tell God's mood. He shines, rains, thunders, but all his works are good. End of section 5. Section 6 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Jolly Yellow Moon. Oh, now has faded from the west a sunset red as wine, and beast and bird are hushed to rest when the jolly yellow moon doth shine. Come, comrades, roam we round the mead, where couch the sleeping kine, the breath of night blows soft indeed, and the jolly yellow moon doth shine. And step we slowly, friend with friend, let arm with arm entwine, and voice with voice together blend, for the jolly yellow moon doth shine. Whether we loudly sing or soft, the tune goes wondrous fine, our chorus sure will float aloft, where the jolly yellow moon doth shine. End of section 6. Section 7 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Youth and Folly. In chapel often when I bawl the hymns to show I'm musical, with bright eye and cheery voice bidding Christian folk rejoice, shame be it said, I've not a thought of the one being whom I ought to worship with unwitting roar. Other godheads I adore. I celebrate the gods of mirth and love and youth and springing earth. Bacchus, beautiful, divine, gulping down his heady wine, dear Pan piping in his hollow, fiery-headed King Apollo and rugged Atlas all aloof, holding up the purple roof. I have often felt and sung, 'tis a good thing to be young, though the preacher says it's folly. Is it foolish to be jolly? I have often prayed in fear, let me never grow austere, let me never think I pray too much about Judgment Day. Never, never feel in spring life's a very awful thing. Then I realize and start and curse my arrogant young heart, bind it over to confess its horrible ungodliness, set myself penances and sigh that I was born in sin and try to find the whole world vanity. End of section 7. Section 8 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Ghost Music. Gloomy and bare the organ loft, bent-backed and blind the organist, from rafters looming shadowy, from the pipes tuneful company, drifted together drowsily, innumerable formless dim, the ghosts of long-dead melodies, of anthems stately, thunderous, of kyrie shrill and tremulous, in melancholy drowsy sweet, they huddle there in harmony, like bats at noontide, rafter hung. End of section 8. Section 9 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Free verse. I now delight, in spite of the might and the right of classic tradition, in writing and reciting straight ahead, without let or omission, just any little rhyme in any little time that runs in my head. Because I've said, my rhymes no longer shall stand arrayed, like Prussian soldiers on parade, that march, step a start, foot to foot, boot to boot, blade to blade, button to button, cheeks and chops and chins like mutton. No, no, my rhymes must go, turny, twisty, twinkling, frosty, will-o'-the-wisp like, misty. Rhymes I will make like Keats and Blake, and Christina and Rossetti, with run and ripple and shake. How petty to take a merry little rhyme in a jolly little time, and poke it and choke it, change it, arrange it, straight-lace it, deface it, pleated with pleats, sheeted with sheets, of empty conceits, and chop and chew, and hack and hew, and weld it into a uniform stanza, and evolve a neat, complacent, complete, academic extravaganza. End of section 9. Section 10 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. In the wilderness. Christ of his gentleness, thirsting and hungering, walked in the wilderness. Soft words of grace he spoke unto lost desert folk, that listened wondering. He heard the bitterns call from ruined palace wall, answered them brotherly. He held communion with the she-pelican of lonely piety. Basilisk cockatrice flocked to his homilies, with mail of dread device, with monstrous barbed stings, with eager dragon eyes, great rats on leather wings, and poor blind broken things, foul in their miseries, ever with him went, of all his wanderings. Comrade with ragged coat, gaunt ribs, poor innocent, bleeding foot, burning throat, the guileless old scapegoat. 40 nights and days followed in Jesus' ways, sure guard behind him kept, tears like a lover wept. End of section 10. Section 11 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. O and O. O and O, the world's a muddle, the clouds are untidy, moon lopsidey, shining in a puddle. Down dirty streets in stench and smoke, the pale townsfolk crawl and kiss and cuddle, in doorways hug and huddle. Loutish he and sluttish she, in loathsome love together press, and unbelievable ugliness. These spiders spin a loathly woof. I walk aloof, head burning and heart snarling, tread feverish quick, my love is sick, far away lives my darling. End of section 11. Section 12 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Cherry time. Cherries of the night are riper than the cherries plucked at noon. Gather to your fairy piper when he pipes his magic tune. Merry, merry, take a cherry, mine a sounder, mine a rounder, mine a sweeter for the eater, under the moon, and you'll be fairies soon. In the cherry plucked at night, with the dew of summer swelling, there's a juice of pure delight, cool, dark, sweet, divinely smelling. Merry, merry, take a cherry, mine a sounder, mine a rounder, mine a sweeter for the eater, in the moonlight, and you'll be fairies quite. When I sound the fairy call, gather here in silent meeting, chin to knee on the orchard wall, cooled with dew and cherries eating. Merry, merry, take a cherry, mine a sounder, mine a rounder, mine a sweeter for the eater, when the dews fall, and you'll be fairies all. End of section 12. Section 13 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Shadow of Death. Here's an end to my art. I must die, and I know it, with battle murder at my heart. Sad death for a poet. Oh, my songs never sung, and my plays to darkness blown. I am still so young, and life was my own. Some bad fairy stole the baby I nursed. Was this my pretty little soul, this changeling accursed? To fight and kill is wrong, to stay at home wronger. O soul, little play and song, I may father no longer. Here's an end to my art. I must die, and I know it, with battle murder at my heart. Sad death for a poet. End of section 13. Section 14 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. The morning before the battle. Today the fight, my end is very soon, and sealed the warrant limiting my hours. I knew it walking yesterday at noon, down a deserted garden full of flowers. Carelessly sang pinned roses on my breast, reached for the cherry bunch, and then death blew through the garden from the north and east, and blighted every beauty with chill breath. I looked, and my wraith before me stood, his head all battered in by violent blows, the fruit between my lips to clotted blood, with transubstantiate and the pale rose, smelt sickly, till it seemed through a swift tear flood that dead men blossomed in the garden close. End of section 14. Section 15 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Limbo. After a week spent under raining skies, in horror, mud, and sleeplessness, a week of bursting shells of blood and hideous cries, and the ever-watchful sniper, where the reek of death offends the living, but poor dead can't sleep, must lie awake with the horrid sound that roars and whirs and rattles overhead, all day, all night, and jars and tears the ground. When rats run big as kittens to and fro, they dart and scuffle with their horrid affair, and then one night relief comes, and we go miles back into the sunny cornland where babies like tickling, and where tall white horses draw the plough leisurely and quiet courses. End of section 15. Section 16 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. The trenches, heard in the ranks. Scratches in the dirt? No, that sounds much too nice. Oh, far too nice. Seems rather of a grey-back shirt, and we're the little lice, wriggling about in them a week or two, till one day, suddenly, from the blue, something bloody and big will come, like, watch this fingernail and thumb, squash, and he needs no twice. End of section 16. Section 17 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Nursery Memories. 1. The First Funeral. The whole field was so smelly. We smelt the poor dog first. His horrid swollen belly looked just like going to burst. His fur was most untidy. He hadn't any eyes. It happened on Good Friday, and there was lots of flies. And then I felt the coldest I'd ever felt, and sick. But Rose, 'cause she's the oldest, dared poke him with her stick. He felt quite soft and horrid. The flies buzzed round his head and settled on his forehead. Rose whispered, "That dog's dead." You bury all dead people when they're quite really dead. Round churches with a steeple. Let's bury this, Rose said. Let's just put mint all around it to hide the nasty smell. I went to look and found it, lots growing near the well. We poked him through the clover, into a hole, and then we threw brown earth right over, and said, Poor dog, Amen. End of section 17. Section 18 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Nursery Memories 2. The Adventure. Today I killed a tiger near my shack. Among the trees, at least it must have been, because his hide was yellow striped with black, and his eyes were green. I crept up close and slung a pointed stone with all my might. I must have hit his head, for there he died without a twitch or groan, and he lay there, dead. I expect he'd escaped from a wild beast show by pulling down his cage with an angry tear. He'd killed and wounded all the people, so he was hiding there. I brought my bowler up as quick I could. There's nothing left when he did come. The tiger's mate was watching in the wood, and she dragged him home. But anyhow I killed him by the shack, 'cause, listen, when we hunted in the wood, my brother found my pointed stone all black, with the clotted blood. End of section 18. Section 19 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Nursery Memories 3. I Hate the Moon. I hate the moon, though it makes most people glad, and they giggle and talk of silvery beams, you know. But she says the look of the moon drives people mad, and that's the thing that always frightens me so. I hate it worst when it's cruel and round and bright, and you can't make out the marks on its stupid face, except when you shut your eyelashes and all night the sky looks green and the world's a horrible place. I like the stars, especially the Big Bear, and the W star, and the one like a diamond ring, but I hate the moon and its horrible stony stare, and I know one day it'll do me some dreadful thing. End of section 19. Section 20 of Over the Brazier. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Big Words. I've whined of coming death, but now no more. It's weak and most ungracious for us, say I. Though still a boy if years are counted, why? I've lived those years from roof to cellar floor, and feel like greybeards touching their fourscore, ready so soon as the need comes to die, and I am satisfied. For winning confidence in those quiet days of peace poised sickly on the precipice side, of fluid crag by Snowdon and in war, finding it firmlier with me than before, winning a faith in the wisdom of God's ways, that once I lost finding it justified, even in this chaos, winning love that stays, and warms the heart like wine at Eastertide, having earlier tried. False love's in plenty, oh my cup of praise brims over, and I know I shall feel small sorrow, confess no sins and make no weak delays, if death ends all and I must die tomorrow. But on the fire step, waiting to attack, he cursed, prayed, sweated, wished the proud words back. End of section 20. Section 21 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. The Dead Foxhunter. We found the little captain at the head. His men lay well aligned. We touched his hand stone cold, and he was dead, and they all dead behind. Had never reached their goal, but they died well. They charged in line, and in the same line fell. The well-known rosy colours of his face were almost lost in grey. We saw that dying and in hopeless case, for others' sake that day. He'd smothered all rebellious groans in death. His fingers were tight clenched between his teeth. For those who live uprightly and die true, heaven has no bars or locks, and serves all taste, or what's for him to do up there but hunt the fox? Angelic choirs? No. Justice must provide for one who rode straight and at hunting died. So if heaven had no hunt before he came, why, he must find one now. If any shirk and doubt they know the game, there's one to teach them how, and the whole host of seraphim complete must jog in scarlet to his opening meet. End of section 21. Section 22 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Cavaet. It's a queer time. It's hard to know if you're alive or dead when steel and fire go roaring through your head. One moment you'll be crouching at your gun, traversing, mowing heaps down, half in fun. The next you choke and clutch at your right breast. No time to think. Leave all and off you go. To Treasure Island where the spice winds blow. To lovely groves of mango, quince and lime. Breathe no goodbye, but ho for the red west. It's a queer time. You're charging madly at them, yelling "Fag!" when somehow something gives and your feet drag. You fall and strike your head, yet feel no pain, and find you're digging tunnels through the hay in the big barn, 'cause it's a rainy day. On springy hay and lovely beams to climb, you're back in the old sailor suit again. It's a queer time. Or you'll be dozing safe in your dugout. A great roar, the trench shakes and falls about. You're struggling, gasping, struggling then. Hullo! Elsie comes tripping gaily down the trench. Hanky to nose, that lyddite makes a stench. Getting our pinafore all grover grimy. Funny, 'cause she died 10 years ago. It's a queer time. The trouble is, things happen much too quick. Up jump the Boches, rifles thump and click. You stagger and the whole scene fades away. Even good Christians don't like passing straight from Tipperary or their hymn of hate to hallelujah chanting and the chime of golden harps. And I'm not well today. It's a queer time. End of section 22. Section 23 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. 1915. I've watched the seasons passing slow, so slow. In the fields between La Bassée and Bethune, primroses and the first warm day of spring, red poppy floods of June, August and yellowing autumn, so, to winter nights knee-deep in smud and snow, and you've been everything. Dear, you've been everything that I most lack, in these soul-deadening trenches, pictures, books, music, the quiet of an English wood, beautiful comrade looks, the narrow, bouldered mountain track, the broad, full-bosomed ocean, green and black, and peace, and all that's good. End of section 23. Section 24 of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Cavaet. Over the Brazier. What life to lead and where to go after the war? After the war. We've often talked this way before, and I see the brazier glow. That April night still feel the smoke and stifling pungency of burning coke. I thought, a cottage in the hills, North Wales, a cottage full of books, pictures and brass and cosy nooks, and comfortable broad window-sills, flowers in the garden, walls all white. I'd live there peacefully and dream and write. But Willie said, no, home's no good, old England's quite a hopeless place. I've lost all feeling for my race, but France has given me heart and blood, enough to last me all my life. I'm off to Canada with my wee wife. Come with us, Mac, old thing, but Mac drawled, no, a coral isle for me. A warm green jewel in the South Sea, there's merit in a lumber shack, and labour is a grand thing, but give me my hot peach and my coconut. So then we built and stocked for Willie a log hut, and for Mac a calm rock-a-bye cradle on a palm. Idyllic dwellings. But this silly, mad war has now wrecked both. And what better hopes has my little cottage got? July 1950. End of section 24. End of Over the Brazier by Robert Graves.